1136. Year 1136, winter. The trial of the 50. You have lived another year in the capital. Eterna has been shaken by what is now known as the trial of the 50. 50 people stand trial at once, all prominent members of several political circles. They are accused of treason and conspiracy against the crown. The accused spoke in favor of reducing the power of the nobles and granting more rights to the common estate. There was no mention of rebellion, yet those words alone were enough to indict them. Every session of the trial is open to the public. It is a show of power made to discourage people from forming such circles ever again. You attend one of these sessions. The 50 face their verdict. Forced labor in the mines of Magra and Illyria for regular members, and true death for their leaders. 6 men and 1 woman. Their public execution takes place in the central square of Eterna. You remember the woman. Her name was Ani Serin. She made a speech before her execution. A young woman, not too tall, her face almost plain, with long bangs over her eyes. She looks calm even at this moment. You cannot believe she is about to leave this world forever. Ani Serin takes a look around before she speaks. Her voice is quiet, but you are close enough to hear every single word. She says she is happy to give her lives, fighting for the rights of the people. Her cause will never die, Ani claims. Others like her will continue their work in hiding, for their cause is right and just. She's dragged away to the others. They put a sack over her head and tighten a noose around her neck. A hand yanks on the lever, and the 7 dangle in the air. Their feet tremble at first, then grow still. There are gasps and cries of discontent in the crowd. Okay, power's gone down, discontent's gone up though. Yikes. Or orders. Wait, I'm not sure what happened actually. Sir L. Croix's lesson. Your studies at the Imperial College may have begun with a luxurious party, but soon you settle into a routine of lesson after lesson. Along with dozens of other future judges, you spend hours listening to lectures in spacious college halls with high ceilings. You study Imperial law and legislation, analyzing every technicality and interpretation. The subjects only get tougher, and the instructors grow ever more demanding as your studies continue. Yet law is not the only thing you study. There are other disciplines as well, such as rhetoric and orthography. A true judge must have a perfect command of both the spoken and written word. Washing the dark blue ink off your fingers becomes an indelible part of your daily routine. Of all your classes, you find the fencing lessons particularly exciting. Every lesson covers your body with more cuts and bruises and makes your muscles ache from exertion. But your childhood dream is worth it. Then finally, there comes a short break in your studies. A handful of days for rest and recreation. You meet Thomas to discuss how you are going to spend this time. You're coming with me tonight. No excuses, Brante. We'll be planning a visit to our mentor, Baron L. Croix. Time you learned a thing or two about how we do things in the military. Your friend looks very cunning and pleased with himself when he says this. With a sigh, you change out of your college uniform and into your best clothes and follow him. Thomas rushes you to a 2-story house somewhere in a noble neighborhood in the capital. Its windows are open, and you can hear people talking over each other. The house's sitting room is filled with young people, at least 24 men, almost all of them academy cadets. In the middle of the sitting room is an armchair, and in this armchair is a gentleman wearing the uniform of an Imperial Legion officer and smoking a pipe. His thick hair falls over his large, observant eyes. Baron L. Croix welcomes the two of you with a slight nod and continues his speech while everyone listens respectfully. As I was saying, young men, I firmly believe that the days when all the military glory of the Empire belonged to the Archean dynasties are long gone. Human nobles have been serving the Emperor at least as well as the Archean nobles for a long time now. Still, the Archeans keep acting like their origins are more important than honor and service to the crown. Take the Melendez dynasty, for example. The Archdukes of Magra. Long ago, their leader, Char Melendez, fomented a rebellion against the rule of the Tempests and the Twins' faith. He sucked all the life from his own land, doomed thousands of his own subjects, and yet the Melendez dynasty still rules over Magra like nothing ever happened. Then suddenly Sir L. Croix flashes a cunning grin. I think this calls for a test of your strategic thinking, men. But first, let me refresh your memory on the rebellion of Char Melendez. It may seem surprising, but we have to thank him for our current status. He was the first to ennoble humans, an act of unprecedented insolence, but it gave the rebellious Duke immense support in his province. He risked his own reputation and title to make himself stronger, thanks to humans, and in that he succeeded. No one had ever dared challenge the rule of the Arcanians and Tempests before, but the rebellion of Magra changed everything. Humans became part of the nobility. We got a taste of the power only the Arcanians could wield before. And unless I'm mistaken, most nobles in the Empire these days are human. Why, we outnumber the members of the Arcanian dynasties dozens of times over. So Char Melendez had complete rule and control over the lands of Magra. He had the loyalty of his ennobled human subjects, and he had the loyalty of the mages and witches who fled to Anazote, the only place in the Empire where they could hide from the church. The Archduke of Magra had everything he needed to win, and yet, two pivotal changes brought him down. First of all, he cast a magic spell that incinerated the entire province. It certainly stopped the Imperial legions in their tracks, but the population of Magra would no longer side with Char Melendez after that. Second, the clergy struck at the rebellious Duke with the power of the twins. His magic was gone, and his main advantage was no more. Many fled, but as you know, it still took the Empire an entire month of siege before the palace in Anazote was taken. After the rebellion of Magra, the Empire changed drastically. And most importantly, humans finally received their lawful rights to be ennobled. And I'd like to stress that in particular, ennobled not by birth, but by virtue of their own knowledge and talents. History, young men, is more than just a memory of the past. It also is a lesson for our future. I believe that part of our history proves my point. And now a test. Tell me, if you were among the Imperial strategists during the rebellion, how would you have done? How would you have fought an enemy as powerful as Char Melendez? With this, Sir L. Croix leans back in his armchair and takes a pull from his pipe, while the cadets start discussing. Some take no time to say they cannot believe Sir L. Croix thinks humans were first ennobled by serving the rebellious Duke. Others say that the prolonged palace siege might have been a mistake and storming the palace would have been a better choice. Soon ideas start flying. Some cause only laughter, while others lead to debates. They're discussing the past of Anazote, the past of your hometown. You cannot possibly stay silent right now. If you were in command of the Imperial legions back then, what would you have done? Based on what you know about the rebellion of Magra, you see three potential strategies. The first involves calling upon the twins' miracles to rob Melendez of magic and render him powerless. The second entails putting your faith in the discipline and valor of the army for a frontal assault. The third means drawing out the siege while making the enemy's life as hard as possible through cunning. Which of these strategies would you have chosen? Let's see, I could rely on the will of the twins, which would be valor and theology. Press for a decisive assault, valor and eloquence. Are these all valor? They're all valor. Or lay siege, valor and scheming. I mean, of these, I feel like laying siege to the palace might... I mean, sieges are boring. You know, they're the typical answer of like, oh, there's a castle, what are we gonna do? Let's siege it. But, you know, I mean, they're very, they come up a lot in history for a reason, which is they're kind of effective. I mean, let's remember, castles, palaces, these sorts of fortifications, they're literally built to withstand being assaulted. So, a direct assault likely could have been quite costly. And that's why oftentimes you'll siege it by just kind of surrounding it, cutting it off from any supplies, and essentially just starving them out. So I would lay siege to the palace under these circumstances. You decide it is time for your answer. for you to answer, Sir Elcroy. The proper way to bring down the castle of Anazote would have been through a prolonged siege, you say. The lands of Magra could no longer feed the warriors of Charmalandus at that stage of the rebellion, and when their supplies eventually ran out, they would have opened the gate from the inside. Sir Elcroy looks at you, studying you attentively. I agree with what you're saying, young Brante. In a sense. Had the Imperial forces done that, they would have lost fewer men and kept the Palace of Anazote intact. Yet, you are missing my other point here. Melandus' army would have continued fighting even emaciated by the siege, even with their numbers dwindling. True, some did flee, but those who stayed to defend the city and the castle, even after the Imperial forces broke in, remained loyal to their lord until the very end. Long ago, only Arcanians had the right to wield weapons and wage war, but now, humans can prove their merits and earn the same rights. Humans, like ourselves. And the present empire has grown even stronger thanks to its new warriors and functionaries. These days, humans can judge and rule and create. The terrors wrought by the rebellious Duke are undeniable, yet his rebellion created the new possibilities for all of us. And this, young men, is the moral of the story. Charmalandus was defeated, but not by the clergy and their prayers, and not even by the noble militias assembled by other archdukes. He was vanquished by the Imperial legions, a unified army with clear regulations and ranks, and a clear chain of command. An army that is strong in discipline and loyalty to the Emperor. His eyes finally moved away from you and back to the rest of the young men in the hall, but nobody else dared to argue with the battle-hardened officer. The evening continues. Sir Elcroy shares some of his war stories, each more astounding than the last. For the rest of the night, you are out of the Baron's center of attention, and so you join Thomas and the other cadets in sipping wine and enjoying his tales. Ooh, I'm a dangerous enemy now. Ooh. You return to the college long after midnight. You often recall Baron Elcroy's story about the rebellion of Charmalandus after that. The rebellious Duke lost the war, and yet he brought about drastic changes for humans and the entire empire. There are days when you receive Year 1136, summer. Letters from home. There are days when you receive letters from home. Father's writing is very reserved. He mostly discusses events and work in Magra, and writes very little about the family. It makes me proud that I have managed to teach Stefan how to handle our affairs at home. Your older brother behaves impeccably at the society balls and receptions that we host. He has already made several crucial acquaintances. But Gloria has a different opinion of Stefan. She thinks her older brother is taking more and more after grandfather. Stefan is a lot like grandfather. It's in his manners, his posture, his voice. He even dresses just like him. He used to be aloof around me, and we barely talked in the past, but now he always blames me and tears me apart. I can't take it anymore. He walks over me all the time and treats me like a housemaid. Mother writes to you. From her letters, you learn that Nathan just barely managed to graduate from school. Poor Nathan. It makes me sad to admit that Nathan has none of the talents you have. The other day he told me he won't even try to study in the capital. He says he won't be able to pass the exams. I find solace only in the nights Nathan and I spend together reading the scriptures and our walks to the church by the silver tree. He accompanies me every time. Yeah, maybe he can become a priest or something. He seems cut out for it. Your sister and younger brother write about Mother too, and they say the same thing about her health. She now spends more time locked away in her chambers to brood. Gloria does her best to accompany Mother when she leaves home, and Nathan's letters mention her steps echoing in the halls in the middle of the night. There's one more thing Nathan mentions in his letters. Stefan and Gloria have been fighting very often these days. Stefan always tries to get under Gloria's skin, and she answers him in kind. Then Stefan calls a lonely commoner to make her shut up. You always tremble in excitement each time you see a new letter with the seal of your home province. Your fate is still bound tightly to your families, no matter the distance between you. What, Stefan? Come on, man, come on. I didn't do nothing. Gloria? Nathan? And I really can't catch a break with these people. If I'm not there physically maintaining my relationships, they're just dwindling away. The first case. You will become a judge one day, so you are sent to the prefecture of Eterna to be mentored by a more experienced colleague. Your mentor is a judge of considerable age, a noble of the mantle with a proud bearing about him. He never misses a chance to remind you that being mentored by such an experienced man of office is a great honor. Your mentor entrusts you with his minor cases, and to his great joy, his night shift. Another night begins. The office is growing darker. You are still there, zealously filling out the paperwork for the day. A petty theft, a verbal assault against a noble of the sword by a commoner, a fine for the parents of children who covered an Imperial institution with obscene drawings. Petty cases, all of them. But they are real cases a judge has to face, and so you sit there carefully comparing complaints, statements, and witness testimony. Then the door of your office swings open. A gendarme drags in a provocatively dressed girl. Her golden hair is undone, and her makeup is fiery red. Girls like her sell their bodies in houses of ill repute. The next to enter the office is a stout priest, his face adorned by a nose of remarkable shape and a huge wart on his cheek. You do your best to avoid staring at it. The gendarme gives his report. The girl was arrested with a certain gentleman in the park by the Temple of the Twins. They were commuting acts of carnality in affronts to the faith. The huffing and puffing priest interrupts him and starts yelling. He saw her do magic, he did. The gentleman was enthralled by the girl, and he was glowing like a lamppost. Huh. I don't think that's normal. You gesture for the priest to stay quiet and ask if the gendarme can prove this. The gendarme only shrugs. He didn't see anyone glowing. He arrested the girl for her sacrilegious conduct alone. The man in her company was a noble, so the gendarme couldn't bring himself to arrest him. He does, however, remember his name. The priest is huffing and puffing even louder now. It was magic, he screams! You must refer this case to the Inquisition! This witch was loose on the streets of the Empire's illustrious capital, seducing good men with her vile charms. The girl stays quiet all the while. Her eyes are emerald green, twinkling with gold as she looks at you. When she does speak, her voice is soft, like smooth velvet. My name is Alice, Your Honor. All I did was obey the gentleman's wishes. He wanted my affection right by the temple, and I dared not oppose him. I did not defy my lot, did I? The wench looks up and meets your gaze as she says these words. Her eyes reflect the candlelight in the dusk, sending sparks of gold dancing across the walls. The gendarme stands awkwardly by the door, sighing. The priest goes off on another rant. You tell him to be quiet. The day is not over yet. You must decide how to resolve this unusual case on your own. The law says a judge must investigate all circumstances related to a case. You know the name of the nobleman who was seen with this girl in the throes of passion. The gendarme was afraid to question him, but you are a future nobleman yourself, a young judge. Surely you can find a way to resolve this matter with discretion and get the information you need from the nobleman. But perhaps this suspicious lady of evening, Alice, sure, is at the heart of the matter. You have no doubt she will reveal her true colors if you question her. If the priest was right about her using magic, the girl's fate is sealed. That sounds like magic. Kinda sounds like magic to me. Your Honor. You look up from your desk and into the eyes of the beautiful Alice, and you suddenly feel as though a divine light is shining upon you. This emotion flows like a river. It lifts you up. This is more than beauty, more than passion. This is much, much more. Will you resist this call, or will you heed it? Okay, what can we do? We can find the nobleman. Okay. We gained some diplomacy there. We could interrogate Alice. Gain some manipulation and theology. Lose some willpower. and Alice would get a true death, or we release her. More manipulation and theology. Or more diplomacy. It also does take willpower. You know what? We'll just... We are a young, in training, essentially just night shift replacement judge. We don't necessarily need to be going all fancy with, like, getting the Inquisition involved and stuff, and interrogating witches and whatnot. We'll do this by the book. We'll find the nobleman, question him, figure out what's going on, what the deal is, get our diplomacy up. We're very boring by the book judge. You tell the gendarme to take the girl to a holding cell. Her eyes are filled with chagrin and pity as the man takes her away. You compose a polite and thorough letter to Sir Diego L. Couture, the nobleman seen with the girl in question. You delicately hint that his reputation will be safe and promise full confidentiality. When you come to the office the next morning, you see a nervous young nobleman waiting at the door. You must be Judge Brante, he says. You meet Sir L. Couture with a dignified greeting and start questioning him on the case of Alice the Holler. Is it true that the two of them ended up in the Temple Park because this was Sir L. Couture's wish? He says he barely remembers last night. He was quite inebriated and determined to have a good time. He spotted Alice by accident. She was standing under a lamppost by the temple. As for the Temple Park, he does not quite remember why they ended up there. You take his statement in accordance with the established procedure. Next question. Would Sir L. Couture say his mind was clouded by the young woman? The nobleman turns red. He asks quietly, Haven't you seen the lass yourself, Sir Brante? How could anyone ignore her? Still, you ask was there anything suspicious about her. He speaks slowly. Yes, it was as though she could see his every desire, and he was happy beyond measure in her embrace. It felt like the gods themselves were smiling at him, Sir L. Couture, and yet perhaps it was merely the wine and her beauty and nothing else. You thank the young nobleman for his honesty and promise to keep his statement a carefully guarded secret. You sentence the harlot to 2 days in a pillory for defiling a palace of worship with her depravity. You find no reason to refer Alice to the Inquisition, however. You write case closed on Alice's file and put it in the archives. Is it A-list, maybe? Maybe that's why the Y's there? I don't know. Oh. You saved the enigmatic singer known as the Golden Voice from an untimely death. Oh, she's a singer, is she? Huh. Well, I guess that's good. Probably, maybe. Who knows, maybe she sings heresies and is corrupting the youths.